we'll make a start. How to learn and revise, or remove that anxiety and worry from learning and revising for exams. It's really quite an important thing. Right. First of all, don't panic. These are the words found on The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy on the front cover. It's a book by Douglas Adams, and I think it sums this up quite nicely. If you start panicking, you will not work productively. Trust me, I've got lots of experience on this, and it's really quite important. And I also have to say, it's never too late to start revising. Possibly the night before is not the best time, unless you're going to pull an all-nighter. Equally, it's never too early to begin. So starting now is a good thing to do, but if you leave it much later, it's not so good. I want to think about how we learn to start off with. And there's a rule of 3. And I think it's quite important that you remember this, because you learn things, once you've seen, in theory, you learn things after you've seen them 3 times. Not totally convinced by that. I personally think that you need to have another look again, but in theory it should be in there somewhere after you've seen something 3 times. So the first time would be in your lesson. Then I suggest after lessons, the next day, or certainly within a week, check what you've done and sort it out. Make sure you could underline headings and tidy all that up. Don't do it in the lesson. Do it after, when you're going through it and making sure you actually understand everything. And then you've got revision. So when you look at it for the first time when you're revising, then you are actually learning it. A long time ago, I went to a talk and the guy said you need to have a look at it an hour later, a week later, a month later, and you will know it. It doesn't really quite work like that for students. I know it doesn't, so I'm not going to suggest that you even try it. But remember, and this is really important, you must understand what it is you are learning. If you don't understand it, you won't be able to use it in the exams in the correct way. So how do you make sure this happens? Well, to be honest, make sure you understand it. You need to go and check. When you check it out, make sure you understand then. If you really don't understand it, go back to your teacher and say, I really, really don't understand this today. And generally, they will go back through it again. I have to say that sometimes it's a little bit difficult, because I know that I've ended up teaching the same thing 3 or 4 lessons and people still going, I don't understand. At that point, maybe it's better to move on, look at something else and come back to it, and maybe that will help. How to revise? Well, you must find your own method. Copying notes rarely works. A number of times I've watched people over the years sit and just rewrite the same old notes over and over again and think that they're actually learning it. You're not, because you're just going from your eyes to your hand, and your brain is not engaged, and you need to engage your brain when you're learning. That's really, really important. Okay, if you're not engaging your brain, you're just not going to learn it. So make sure you engage your brain. You also need to be organized. And this is where it comes in. Tidy desk equals tidy brain, or it helps. I have to say, this is the state of my desk generally. Books everywhere, total chaos, and I can never find anything that I need when I need it. So I've sort of given up. I try very hard to have a desk that looks like this. It took me literally 2 minutes to sort it out, and I had a stack of papers that I still needed to sort through, but I knew where everything was. I was nicely organized, and that set me up. Okay, don't spend hours doing it, because then you're just wasting time, but just tidy everything away so that you can find what you need. And then there are 5 P's. These are really important. Planning and preparation prevents poor performance. It's an old army saying, or that's where I learned it anyway, but it's so, So true. If you plan and you prepare, you can really get much better results. If you don't plan and prepare for your exams, well, you know, and you leave it until a week before, you're going to struggle a bit. I'm not saying you'll fail, but you will struggle more. So coming back to your organisation, you need a quiet and tidy space. Quiet is quite important. When you're sitting your exams, you will be in a silent room, or relatively silent room. And it's been found that when you need to regurgitate work or write it down, I shouldn't say regurgitate it, but when you need to answer questions, you need to have the same environment when you're learning as when you're doing the exam. So I used to listen to music, but it was very calming music. It wasn't pop music. It was generally Mozart, actually, because it's very mathematical and I like it. Okay, so quiet and tidy space. Set aside time every day. Try and have a fixed time, be it after supper or your tea or whatever, for an hour or so, because that's important. And be realistic. Don't say, right, I'm going to spend 3 hours every night revising. I know some parents might want you to be revising for 3 hours every night, but at this stage, we're quite early on in the cycle. It's not, you know, you'll be bored witless and you'll be overtired, quite frankly. So I say, aim for 30 minutes per subject once a week. Okay, you just do 30 minutes and that's it. And you break the time up. So I'm saying, like, we'll do an hour after supper, we'll do 2 subjects, but we need to break that time up into 2 sections. If you got into a subject, you could spend the whole hour studying the subject, but if you set a timer and have a break every 30 minutes, just for 5 minutes, you will find that you'll be much more productive, because I'll tell you what, you'll be working against the clock. If I set myself time limits, even when I'm just working for myself, I get so much more done. And lots of people say that. And some people have kitchen timers that buzz after 30 minutes. They set their kitchen timer to buzz and then they get up, have a walk around, have a quick break, and then go back to it. And your brain doesn't get overloaded. 30, 40 years ago, when I first started, it would be 50 minutes and a 10-minute break. You could do either. But a lot of people now struggle, partly due to, originally it was ads, short ads on TV, but now, and it's sort of the time that you can concentrate for and focus for has reduced significantly. I think TikTok and Instagram and all those sorts of things have really reduced the time that you can concentrate for. Apart from if you're playing computer games, for some reason, we can all get pulled into those for hours. You need to create a revision timetable. This is really simple. It does not have to be beautifully coloured or anything like that. This is for 1 week. Okay, I've done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night have off, and then you could set something up for Saturday and Sunday. Okay, it's not difficult to do. You does not need to be multicoloured. I have seen some girls produce beautiful, and I mean beautifully coloured and designed revision timetables. They have spent hours on it. What is the point? I've broken this down a little bit, but you probably ought to break it down a bit more because, for example, forces in physics is a huge topic. You will have spent probably a term or 2 studying forces, certainly in the AQA. So you need to be aware of that. Cells, you probably know some of the cells, but there's stem cells, which is more complicated. So say, right, I'm going to learn about stem cells today. But you need to know what you need to know. That sounds a bit wrong, but if you need to look at what you've got to revise, and you've got to know what bits you're actually weak on, because there's no point in, say, for example, the cells, coming back to the cells, you know that, you know, the basic structure of a cell, but you don't know stem cells. So pick out which bits of a specification or syllabus or whatever you want to call it you don't know. Okay, different methods. I'm just going to show you these. There are more. These are ones I've found particularly effective over the years with different students. So there's the mind map. There are flashcards. There are journeys. This is where you imagine a journey and you put things along it. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Stories, make them silly. Journeys and stories, if you make them silly, you'll remember them forever. Okay. Mnemonics, self-test, and practice papers, which are slightly different things. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a mind map. And you need to mix it up. If you don't mix it up, you're going to struggle. You will get bored and you won't be as effective. So we're going to start with a mind map. And I need to bring in my annotations if it will let me. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick mind map for the heart. Okay. Now, mind maps, I would revise something and then create a mind map. There is no point in trying to create a mind map unless you know the subject. Okay, so to me, that seems to be the most logical thing to do. You could do hundreds and hundreds of them and spend hours creating them and end up with a stack. You probably wouldn't look at them again. So this you could use as a sort of self-test. Okay, I've revised that. What can I remember of what I've just read? Which you'd be surprised. Sometimes you remember lots and sometimes you don't. So I'm just going to do it for the heart. And you're going to enjoy my really good writing note. Okay, so the heart, what could I say about the heart? It's got 4 chambers. Yeah. And they're broken down to 2 atria, right and left, but you don't need to worry about that. And 2 ventricles. And you've got valves in between the 2. Blood flows in one way. Flow, and that's controlled also by valves. So valves are quite important. Okay, you could name the valves here. There's the atrioventricular and the semilunar. I'm of course going to run out of space. Etc. Then it's split in 2. It's divided in 2, or you've got, yeah. So it's, yeah, we'll put split in 2. Okay, so it's a double circulatory system. This is the human heart. I want to put human in there because amphibians and birds are different. So are reptiles for that matter, and fish. Double circulation. Okay, that's split in 2. So that's basically the structure. It's made up of heart muscle. So put cardiac muscle in there, which is very special. Okay, oops. And then up the top here, I could talk about the pacemaker, which controls heart rate. And that's controlled by the vagus nerve. I'm not sure if you need to know that for GCSE, but if you're doing A-level, you certainly do. And it's found in the right atrium. Then when you think about the blood vessels, so you've got arteries. Oops. Come on, spell arteries right. It was always help. Arteries. And they go towards the heart. So I'm going to do arrows in. There's 2 of them. There's the pulmonary artery. No, they don't go towards the heart. What am I saying? They go away from the heart. What happened to my brain then for 2 seconds? They go away from the heart, and the pulmonary and the aorta. And the pulmonary goes to the lungs, and it has deoxygenated blood. The aorta goes to the body, and it has oxygenated blood. And then you've got veins. Crikey, it's quite complicated, isn't it, already? And this is why I think it's useful if you actually learn it. So you've got the pulmonary. Okay, and that is oxygenated blood, and it's from the lungs. And then you've got the vena cava, and that's deoxy, and it's from the body. There is still more to do if you wanted to on the heart, but there you go. That's a huge amount of stuff to learn. Okay, but we're getting there, and it's a starting point. As I say, I think mind maps personally are better off for doing other things, once you've learnt it, and then you can revise it. I'm hoping this will let me. Oh, it's kept that in. Okay, let me just delete all that. I thought it would lose it. It didn't. So I have to clear that. Sorry about that. And then we go to flashcards. Flashcards can be really useful for certain things, okay? But when should you use them? It needs to be for short pieces of information. So, for example, you could write huge amounts on little flashcards, but what's the point? Your little tiny writing. You could do key points. I came up with another one that I haven't put down here, and that is, say, the history of the structure of the atom. You could do a nuclear structure and the plum pudding model, but you'd have to think about how they found it out as well. So it gets quite complicated. It needs to be for really simple things. So things like equations for your physics, although physics in theory you're going to be given them, you still need to understand them. You still need to be able to apply them. So in some ways, you're better off learning them. You will be given them in the exam this year, only this year, by the looks of it. You've got maths equations. Use them for maths equations. Brilliant. Okay. Dates. I can never remember dates. If you're doing history, you might benefit from writing key dates and put down the things that happened on those key dates. So you can say, what happened, you know, you've got a list of things on one side and the date on the other, and you either look at it from one side or the other side. It doesn't really matter. Foreign languages, you need to learn specific words. Really great for that. Love flashcards for that. So flashcards really do have a place for if you want to, say you're sitting on a bus and you're trying to learn stuff, or you've just got a few minutes and you've got them in your bag, you're waiting for somebody to pick you up or something like that. I think they're really useful for that. But they, as I say, you do need to use them for simple points. I'm sure there are other uses for them. Journeys and stories. I love this idea. If you've got, for example, if you're doing A-level ever and you've got a metabolic pathway in biology that you need to learn, journeys really work for this. So you're traveling along and there's a series of bits of information you need to learn. So what you would do is you would put individual ideas at different points in the journey. And you've got them in sequence then. So as you travel along on your bus or in the car, or you've gone for a walk and you think of all the things, it can be something you will know really well. But at the same time, try and make it a bit funny. So you try and make it such that when you get to this tree, it explodes into one of the ideas. Or just, try and make it funny. And they're great for lists in a specific order. That's my main use for them. So, for example, the electromagnetic spectrum. I have struggled so much to learn this. And then I remembered my journey or story, that method, the other week. And I tried this out and it's worked. I can actually now remember the order of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I'm just thrilled. It sounds really stupid, but it's like, yes, I've got it at last. So I'm sitting in my home listening to the radio waves, and the radio waves are coming through my Wi-Fi, which is done through the microwaves. I've got a microwave connection. So there we go, radio waves, microwaves. I then decide that I'm going to go for a walk. It's dark outside and the infrared sensor on the outside light is triggered by me and it turns the visible light on. So I've now got radio waves, microwaves, infrared. let me just check this, infrared and visible. I've got those 4 in my head in the right order. My dog, I've got my dog with me and it's spooked by the ultraviolet. Dogs can see, and some animals can see in the ultraviolet, spooked by something in the ultraviolet. I fall over, hurt myself and have to go to hospital for an X-ray. Whilst they're treating me, they realise that I'm really not very well and I'm going to have to be treated for cancer with gamma rays. So suddenly I've got uses and the correct order for these, and it's there, it's in my head, and it's like, yes, I've got it, but I've also got my uses. And if you can link the two, you're doing even better. You've saved yourself a lot of work and a lot of, I really can't get this, I'm not able to remember, you know, it's where you're doing your self-testing, you write it down and you can't remember it and you get it muddled up. I think this is, you know, doing stories for lists and things like that is great. Mnemonics, another great one. So the most famous one that I know of is this: Richard of York gave battle in vain. And I'm hoping that you can all remember this is for the rainbow. So it's Richard is red, of is orange, York is yellow, gave is green, B is blue, in is indigo, and V is violet. And you will remember it forevermore if you remember that particular mnemonic for it. Another mnemonic I quite like is Mrs. Gren, and that's for the life processes. In theory, you don't need to know them anymore. You're expected to know them from Key Stage 3. But I think it's quite useful to learn these because if you're answering a question, you can think about what else needs to be covered, particularly if you go on to do A-level or anything like that. So you've got movement, reproduction, sensitivity, growth, respiration, excretion, and nutrition. And sometimes it just helps you to sort things out in your own head and what different things are for. So I really like Mrs. Gren, Richard of York. There are hundreds. In music, there's Every Boy Gives Good Favours, something like that. I've just forgotten it for the cleft. Yes, don't even treble cleft. Every boy deserves good favour. Deserves favours. Every boy deserves favours. I've remembered it now. I remembered it yesterday. So there you go. It's a long time since I used that one. Self-testing. Now, there are 2 ways to do this. You could either learn something and then try and write it out, like I did with the mind map, so you're using it in a slightly different way, or you could write yourself some questions whilst you're going through and then test yourself later. Or you could get a friend to write questions. You can test each other. I used to do this with a friend. She's actually an eye surgeon now. And I shared a flat with her for several years, and I used to sit and test her on the stuff that she needed to know. So in the end, I could probably have sat the medical degree, but it's fine. It was good at my knowledge, it improved my knowledge as well. But you know, it's really useful to get someone to test you and learn the stuff as you go. The other one is practice papers. Most schools will give you practice papers. They will also give you mark schemes because the teachers teach a lot of students. They probably don't have time to mark the papers. It depends where you're at and things. Be honest when you are marking. Okay, the mark schemes are generally very specific. And if you give the wrong answer, even if you think, oh, yeah, well, that's what I meant, you're not being honest with yourself. And you're giving yourself marks and you're thinking, oh, yes, well, I know that, when actually you're not as quite there as you think you are. An example was a question came across this week was oxygen and hydrogen give you something. And the question was fill in the word equation. The important thing was the word equation. So the correct answer wasn't actually, because oxygen, word, hydrogen, word, the correct answer was not H2O. The correct answer was water. So that's a really important point to remember. You have to remember that the correct word is water. Okay. just to finish off, that's basically all the stuff I was going to cover. What else do I offer? Just really quickly, I'm putting together workshops at the moment, and I will be putting those up in the next couple of weeks, certainly. I also putting together revision courses. Those are the websites that you can find them on. I also still have the odd place for private tutoring, not many, and it would have to fit in around my current tutees. So there we go. And you can also follow me for more hints and tips on how to revise and ideas and things like that. I'm not quite sure how many of these I'm going to be on. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, obviously, and those are my handles. I don't quite know how. No, Dr. Nash Science Tutor had already been taken on Instagram, so I'm Dr. Nash 20 there. TikTok, I'm also Dr. Nash Science Tutor. I'm going to do some fun things there, hopefully. I've got some in my mind. And also in Pinterest. Not sure how much I'm going to do with Pinterest, because that's really for the grown-ups. But certainly Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, you'll be able to see me there with more hints and tips. So do give me a like and a follow. And I've also do a bit on, I've missed out YouTube. There's a few bits and pieces on YouTube. Okay. Finally, and I love this because I think it sums it all up. Somebody's put on their door, please leave me alone. I've got a week. Yeah, I've got a week's worth of work to do in 3 hours because I have the time management skills of a carrot. Thank you. That's me. That's most people. It has to be said. Most people have got the time management of a carrot. There's a fun monkey or chaos monkey. Somebody put it. There's a brilliant TED talk on this where you've got chaos monkey always wanting you to have fun, and you've got a sensible head, and chaos monkey normally wins until the last minute. So just remember that. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope that was useful and you've learned something.